Ashley Mailloux here with the Daily Racing Form. This Sunday out at Santa Anita Park is our race of the day, which is their 8th race, $100,000 Cinema Stakes at 1.25 miles on the downhill, and it's for 3-year-olds. We'll take a look at the field. 7 have been entered, and some of the bigger names in here. Mi Hermano Ramon has been very impressive in his last several efforts. He was 4th in the Grade 3 Transylvania, and more recently was able to win the Singletary by a head. A fair bit of maidens in here. Smart Uncle is one of them, as well as Maltese Falcon, Worcester. It makes for an interesting race. Actually, the only horse with multiple wins under the belt is the number 4 in here, Mi Hermano Ramon. So we'll take a look at this field one by one. We'll start with the number 1, El Perfecto. It's one of the Keith Sormo barn who had tried the dirt in his first 3 career starts. Then they sent him to Golden Gate for that maiden special weight event on the grass, and he was much the best in there. His numbers improved dramatically. You see that before: a 40, a 54, and a 13 buyer. Getting on the turf for the first time, a 73. So he really turned it around. He was forwardly placed. He had never been that close to the pace in his dirt starts, and it seemed like the surface change is what he needed. The barn does very well with horses that are coming off a win and looking to kind of repeat in the winner's circle. And gets a new rider. Victor Espinoza has the call. The number 2, Smart Uncle, one of several maidens in the field. This one out of the Jonathan Thomas barn. It's interesting to see this horse because on Saturday there's another stakes race with another shipper for Jonathan Thomas. And when I looked at that race, I think that horse, they have some expectations for, and that's why that one isn't a stake race. But this is a maiden that's going to go against some winners in here. Was second in that lone start at Indiana back on May 25th. And in terms of the trip, kind of split that field mid-pack early on and tried to make a late move. But I didn't have a strong enough kick in the stretch. Was still moving nicely, but needed a bit more. Now is just going to face winners. And I will say the barn does very well, though, with maidens second time out. And I think looking at that 1.1/16 to 1.25 miles, the horse like him, based on his pedigree, I'm not really worried about the distance. I think this would probably hit him just at the right distance. The number 3, Wizard of Westwood. We'll take a look at his most recent performance. Both him and Hermano Ramon exit that race. And Wizard of Westwood, he always wants to be forwardly placed. He was forwardly placed here. He's the 3. The number 1 is Mi Hermano Ramon, and he's going to be able to have that kind of clear kick on the outside. Wizard of Westwood, though, is going to fight in here and try to hang on, but he will be defeated in the end by a head. With all that said, though, you can see game to the wire is just, he faced a horse that had a better kick in the stretch. And the one thing with Wizard of Westwood, he's going to be part of that pace scenario, but now he's going to try to take the show that he has and not only look for a second lifetime win, but he's going to have to go further once again. Gradual stretch out has actually been pretty good for him, but he hasn't been able to find himself back in the winner's circle. When he won, he broke his maiden at debut at Los Alamitos Racecourse, and then he went 6.5, a mile, and then 1 1/8 on the turf, all at Santa Anita. Now he's going to have to go longer, but I do think he's going to have part of that pace scenario at his advantage. He can kind of set himself up, hopefully nicely early on, and control the pace, and maybe he hangs around for a share in here. I mean, he's been able to do that now 3 starts in a row, and he has faced really nice horses. Obviously, he's going to have to tackle one of his competitors again, but you see Johannes in the race 2 and 3 back, and he really wasn't beaten by much in one of those efforts. So he's an interesting horse here, at least with his form and his pace presence. Now, the number 4, Mi Hermano Ramon, this one out of the Mark Glatt barn, was a pretty good 4th in the Transylvania, the Grade 3 event at Keeneland. You looked in terms of trips. Yes, he didn't have this huge kick in the stretch, but you have to think about the waters and how deep they were in that race. Mustache was the winner. He came back to finish 4th in the American turf. The runner-up, Nagarock, we saw with a big performance on Preakness Day at Pimlico, was able to win a stakes race there. And then the 3rd place finisher, Web Slinger, has been very impressive. He has 2 wins back-to-back now, and the Audubon Stakes more recently, and then he was actually the winner of the American Turf on Kentucky Derby Day weekend at Churchill. So to see how productive that race has been, I think it speaks very well. And then to combine that with the fact that Mi Hermano Ramon came back to win next out, we saw that performance really got clear on the outside with Umberto Rispoli and kicked on very nicely, going 1 1/8. You have to think 1.25 miles, he should be just fine. And it was nice to see him come out of that stake and then, end up in the winner's circle. And he's the only multiple winner in the field. He's a 3-time winner. Look at his other 2 races. They really weren't bad. I mean, he was 4th in both of them. So he's a very consistent type. He's going to be pretty tough in this spot on Sunday. Now we'll move on to the number 5, Maltese Falcon. It's one of the Leonard Powell barn. This is a maiden, but I really want to take a look at his most recent performance because I thought it was quite good considering the trip. You can see him here in those red silks. He is number 1. He's on the rail, and he just has no room. He's going to try to angle out here. He's going to have to split horses, really eager to try to get to the inside, but really ran out of room, and the rail is going to end up shutting up on him. And he's not going to have anything, but he does kick on nicely. Once he gets some clearance, he ends up finishing third in here, beaten by just a length and a half. And obviously, he's a maiden going against winners, but I just thought that was a pretty good performance to see him not get discouraged despite all the things that were happening in the stretch. And looking at that performance, even despite that, we saw him kick on nicely. I have to think this distance is really going to suit him well, and he seems to be improving with each start. He's just going to make his second start since that freshening. He had that time off between March and May. So an outsider in here, but interesting. And Hector Barrios has been riding very well there, especially on the grass. We'll move to the number 6, Phosphorescence. This one out of the Michael McCarthy barn, was fourth last time out in the Alcatraz at Golden Gate Field. Prior to that was a nice second in the Cal Derby behind Prince Abu Dhabi. He's kind of been all over the place, but for the most part, he's stayed to the turf. His best races besides the Cal Derby, which was a synthetic surface at Golden Gate, it seems like they figured him out, and he's liked both of these surfaces. His lone win came 3 back when he was able to graduate locally at Santa Anita, going a mile. And he's going to be interesting because in his last 2, he hasn't been forwardly placed. Both of those races at Golden Gate, I shouldn't say he was forwardly placed, he just wasn't on the lead. And he does have the ability to be forwardly placed. But when you look at the pace perspective in here, at least coming out of turf races, his stablemate is the other horse that has a little bit of speed. So I would doubt that these two really hook up early in here, but you never know. And Keith DeSormo is going to ride this one. And also with Phosphorescence, no, blinkers will go on. He has raced with blinkers in the past. You have to go back 4 and 5 starts, and those were in those turf sprints out at Santa Anita. So it's interesting to see the blinkers go back on in this spot. And rounding out the field, the number 7, Worcester, this one of the Bob Baffert barn. He's a wild card in terms of Beyer's speed figures, if that's what you go to. And everyone knows that is one tool for me that I really like to use. He towers over this field. He's got 3 90 plus Beyer speed figures. More recently, he was a 94. And we'll take a look at that performance. Now, the big thing to note, looking at the replay, this was on the dirt, and he was 1 to 5 in this spot. He took a lot of respect. And just to see him here, he's going to be on the inside, Smart Mo to his outside, and they're going to have a little bit of a throwdown here in the stretch, and it's a game battle from Worcester. But he's not going to be able to get the job done. And now he's an 0 for 5 maiden. It was the first time he'd really gone off favored so far. I will say he was gritty here, but we're talking about a mile on the main track. He's yet to try the turf course in his career. Bob Baffert, just looking at the past year, just 1 for 20 with horses, first time turf. To me, I don't know. I think he could be a short price in here based on his numbers, but the surface switch is questionable. He ran so well last time out. Why not put him in another maiden special weight event and hopefully he graduates and starts 6? And for some reason, maybe they know something. Maybe they think he's the turf. But for me, there wasn't enough here to think that the turf was going to be kind of the wake-up call. And just looking at his Beyers, as I said, those are dirt Beyers, so it's hard to know what to do with them in this spot. So that is the field of 7 for DRF's Race of the Day this Sunday. Don't forget to scan or click the QR code on your mobile app to get free past performances. Always a great resource. And without further ado, looking at the field, I just think of what we've seen so far. The number 4, Mi Hermano Ramon, has been so impressive. Has been able to get these good trips where he can sit just off the pace or be further back and be able to run really late in the stretch and pass horses quite easily and quite nicely. So for me, looking at the pace perspective in here, I think he'll get a good trip. And he's one that I think I'm almost certain he's going to like 1.25 miles. So use him on top. I think the number 3, Wizard of Westwood, is going to be part of that pace scenario. And I know he's been kind of pushing it each time on the stretch out, but just knowing that he was able to finish second last time out behind my top pick in here, he was very game in the stretch. Even though he's getting beaten, I can't use him on the top spot, but I could see him kind of, getting a minor share here, maybe rounding out the exacta. So I do use him in second. The number 7, Worcester. Very curious to see the tote action on this horse. As I mentioned, his numbers really are quite strong. He's faced some very nice horses in those races, but now he's going to try the turf for the first time. And just the numbers for the outfit are not what you see if this was a dirt race. If it's a dirt race, he's favored in here, but it's not. So it's an interesting switch for him. And then the number 5, Maltese Falcon, is a horse that I actually really want to watch going forward. I don't know how he's going to fare as a maiden in this stakes race, but I had to say I was pretty impressed with the replay last time out. I think he's got some upside, and he's a horse that's going to really appreciate the stretch out and distance and making that second start off the layoff. But top pick in Sunday's Race of the Day for me is the number 4, Mi Hermano Ramon. Good luck.